The film opens with Zoe, a physics student in a college lecture hall. A professor asks her a question that she knows the answer to, but she is too shy to speak up and remains silent. After class, her professor tells her she needs to learn to speak up and challenges her to do something that scares her over Thanksgiving break. The following day, she finds a package outside her dorm room. Inside is a note from her professor and a black puzzle box. Elsewhere, Jason, a hotshot stock trader, gets a call from a happy client who offers him a vacation in Fiji. He later receives a note from the client along with the same black puzzle box Zoe received earlier. Meanwhile, Ben, a stock boy at a grocery store, arrives at work and finds a note from his boss and a black puzzle box on his workstation. Zoe, Jason, and Ben each manage to open their puzzle boxes by their own unique methods. Inside is a card inviting them to a place called Minos Escape Room, where the first person to escape the room will earn $10,000. A few days later, Ben, an ex-US soldier and Iraq veteran named Amanda, Danny, who is an escape room enthusiast, Jason, Zoe, and Mike, who is a truck driver, arrive at the Minos building. While seated in the waiting room, the group chats, waiting for the game to start. After a while, Ben gets tired and wants to go outside for a smoke. When he tries to open the door, the handle breaks off in his hand, and Danny realizes that the game has started. Where the handle broke off is now an oven dial, and the group begins searching for clues. Meanwhile, Mike flips through the books on the shelf and finds a screwdriver in a copy of Fahrenheit 451. Zoe then turns the oven dial to 451 degrees, turns the panels around the room on, and begins heating the room. As the room gets hotter, Amanda panics and Zoe gets her a glass of water from the water cooler. Zoe also notices a sign on the wall that says to use the coasters. In a brilliant move, she presses down on one of the coasters on the coffee table, and a painting on the wall moves to reveal an air duct. She figures out that all 6 of the coasters need to be pressed down to keep the painting from blocking the air duct. Zoe, Danny, Ben, Amanda, and Mike press the coasters down while Jason crawls into the duct. Inside, he finds a grate that leads into another room, but he needs a screwdriver from Mike, who joins him in the duct to open the grate. Zoe tells Amanda to go next, while the rest hold the coasters down. Zoe then figures out that they can fill the water glasses to the top using the water cooler, and those will be heavy enough to hold the coasters down. Unfortunately, Amanda panics in the duct and flashes back to crawling out of a military jeep in the desert after a blast. Seeing this, Ben and Danny tell Zoe to go help Amanda while they fill their glasses. Zoe calms Amanda down, and they continue through the duct. Ben and Danny are only able to fill 5 glasses before the water cooler becomes empty, as Amanda had drunk a glass earlier. Hence, Ben pulls out his flask and fills the 6th glass with alcohol. The 2 remaining men then crawl through the duct as the room bursts into flames behind them. The group then finds themselves in a log cabin. Jason sees a lock on the front door that requires 7 letters to open. Nearby, Ben notices 9 antlers mounted on the wall, each with a letter below them. He flashes back to driving at night with his friends. They're all drunk and loudly singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer when Ben crashes head-on into another car. Ben realizes that the letters under the antlers are the first letters of the names of Santa's reindeer. He then tells them to try Rudolph, and the lock opens. The group then enters a snowy clearing where the ground is water that has frozen over. Nearby, Jason finds a locked door in a wall, and Amanda finds a boat with a red jacket and says that they'll take turns wearing it, starting with Zoe. After a while, Mike finds a fishing pole in a tree, and Ben stumbles across a fishing hole in the ice after stepping on it. While the other 5 drop the fishing line into the hole to see how deep it goes, Zoe uses the compass to wander around. She notices the compass malfunctioning near a stuffed polar bear and reaches into the bear's mouth to find a magnet. When she rejoins the group, Mike attaches the magnet to the fishing line and drops it into the hole again. Following this, Jason says that it's his turn to wear the jacket and takes it from her. He pulls up a metal frame filled with a frozen solid block of ice with a key in the middle. Just as he walks towards Ben to grab a lighter to melt the block, the ice beneath him breaks, dropping him into the water and ultimately killing him. Seeing this, Jason flashes back to sitting on the hull of an overturned boat in icy water next to another man who is wearing the same red jacket they found in the room. The remaining survivors take turns wearing the jacket and slowly manage to melt the ice block by all putting their hands on it. Jason puts the key on a nearby door, but another door across the room opens and they run for it. The ice starts cracking beneath them as they run across the room, but they all make it. The next room is a bar with a pool table with everything upside down and bolted to the ceiling. Mike realizes that the 8-ball is the only ball missing from the pool table. Suddenly, a piece of the floor falls away, revealing a 15-story drop under the room. Amanda immediately climbs up behind the bar where she finds a safe that requires a 4-digit code. Meanwhile, Zoe sees a sliding puzzle on the wall and climbs to it to start solving it while another part of the floor falls. Jason then climbs onto a platform next to the exit door, which is missing the handle. Ben and Mike also climb onto the sliding puzzle frame with Zoe while more of the floor falls away. Fortunately, Zoe solves the puzzle and they give Amanda the code to open the safe and get the 8-ball, which functions as the door handle. However, the sliding puzzle frame starts to come away from the wall due to their combined weight. Consequently, Zoe falls onto a section of the floor below the puzzle and is dazed by the impact. She flashes back to the inside of a crashed airplane, which is upside down. Jason quickly jumps down and helps Zoe onto the platform, climbing up just before that section of the floor falls. Amanda then puts the 8-ball in her pocket and jumps from the bar to the pool table. In doing so, the ball falls out of her pocket onto the last remaining section of the floor and starts to roll towards the edge. Amanda then jumps down, grabs the ball, and throws it to Jason just before the floor falls, killing her. Zoe is devastated, and Ben tries to comfort her while Jason pushes ahead into the next room. The fourth room is filled with 6 hospital cubicles. The survivors recognize the cubicles as replicas of the hospital rooms they were in after their respective accidents. Suddenly, a TV turns on and starts a 5-minute countdown. But Zoe says they should stop playing along and start destroying all the cameras in the room. Meanwhile, the men realize that the X-rays they found spell EKG in sign language. Jason sees the EKG machine and deduces that they need to use it to measure a very high heart rate. He manages to convince Mike that they need to use a defibrillator on his heart to achieve this. Jason shocks Mike twice with the paddles until his heart rate is over 200. But this causes Mike to become unconscious. Ben performs CPR to try to revive him, but is unsuccessful. On the other hand, Jason realizes the EKG also needs to measure a low heart rate for the door to open. Thus, he attaches the machine to himself and calms himself until his heart rate drops below 50. His plan works and the door opens. Just then, the countdown ends and a poisonous gas starts to fill the room. Ben begs Zoe to follow him and Jason out of the room, but she refuses because she is still breaking cameras and is convinced that is the solution. Jason and Ben leave, and Zoe smashes the last camera, but she soon collapses on the floor and starts foaming at the mouth. Following this, Jason and Ben enter the 5th room, which is completely covered in a black and white checkered pattern. After a brief fight, Ben angrily walks away and finds a hatch on the floor. It's too heavy to open alone, and the two work together to open it. They get the hatch open and notice a substance on their hands from the handle. Seconds later, they start hallucinating and see a message under the hatch that tells them the antidote is in the room. After a brief bit of searching, Ben finds the antidote, but there is only one dose. Suddenly, Jason attacks him to get the antidote, and they fight as the floor rotates. Ultimately, Ben kicks Jason's head into a table corner, fatally injuring him. Ben uses the antidote on himself, drops down into the hatch, and falls into an old-fashioned study. There, he sees a door with a puzzle on the wall that requires him to slide 4 numbers into position to open. When he moves one of the numbers, the wall opposite the exit begins to move toward him, crushing everything in its path.
Oh, God, there's no way out!
Soon enough, he is trapped between the 2 walls and his leg is punctured by a sharp stick. He is close to being crushed between the walls until he manages to squeeze sideways into the fireplace and exit the room. He enters a large room where a screen shows the 6 contestants, each with their faces crossed out except for his. Then, the game master greets him and explains that the game was designed to entertain a select group of rich and powerful people. Elsewhere, 2 workers in hazmat suits enter the hospital escape room where they are ordered to clear out Mike and Zoe's bodies. Inside, they notice a breathing tube hanging from the ceiling. Zoe, who used the breathing tube to survive after destroying the cameras, attacks them from behind with an IV stand and exits the room. Meanwhile, Ben asks the game master if he can leave since he won the game, but the latter starts to strangle him with a wire. Ben pulls the stick out of his wounded leg and stabs his assailant, who drops the wire. Just as the game master climbs on top of Ben to choke him, a computer beeps, "System override." Suddenly, Zoe arrives and shoots the game master, but doesn't kill him as he runs behind some crates. While Zoe is distracted, he attacks her and manages to get control of the gun. Before he can shoot her, Ben smashes him in the head with a glass container and kills him. The screen changes to show Zoe and Ben listed as winners. The 2 then exit the building and go to the hospital for Ben's injuries. Hours later, the police pick up Zoe from the hospital to go to the Minos building. There, she sees the words "No Way Out" spray-painted on the wall and realizes that it's an anagram for Dr. Wutan Yu, whose name appeared multiple times in different escape rooms. But the police don't believe her story and tell her they need to leave the premises. 6 months later, Zoe meets Ben in a cafe where she shows him a binder of disturbing information about Minos. Using the Minos logo, she has also discovered the coordinates of their headquarters in New York City. After a long chat, Ben reluctantly agrees to join her on a flight to New York. The scene cuts to a plane suspended inside a warehouse and the Minos employees as flight attendants and passengers testing out an escape room scenario. A figure in shadows appears on a screen and reveals that he has Ben and Zoe's flight itinerary and the scenario needs to be ready for their flight. So, did anyone survive the ultimate escape room, or was the game designed to have no winners?